We begin with a mystery so old it hides beneath every breath you take, resting quietly on your skin, because your skin, smooth, bare, and exposed, is the legacy of a puzzle that began roughly 1.5 million years ago, when early humans did something no other ape had ever done. They started shedding their fur. It seems simple today, almost ordinary, but to imagine a world of tall, heat-hardened hominins walking under the African sun with skin uncovered is to imagine a transformation that shaped everything we later became. And the truth is stranger than the myth. We did not lose our hair because we wanted to stay cool, not entirely, not at first, but because a web of forces was closing in on our species. Heat rising across the savannas, distances stretching between water and food, parasites riding the thick coats of predators and prey alike, social cues becoming more subtle, more complex, skin darkening to meet the sun's punishment, and every one of these pieces begins appearing across the next 15 moments of our journey. First comes the long heat, then the sweating engine, then the endurance that made us hunters. Parasites and diseases drive more hair away. Wind and water become partners in cooling. Bare skin becomes a surface for communicating trust. Firelight changes how bodies gather. Scent shifts, mating changes, melanin thickens. Patches of hair remain for reasons we still decode. Clothing rises as nights grow cold. Fossils echo the path. Modern humans show the aftermath. And finally, we face the dawn of how our future bodies may continue this ancient transformation. All of it begins here, in the first step, when a creature built like an ape slowly began looking like something new. So imagine Africa 1.5 million years ago, during the age of Homo erectus, a time when climate was shifting toward drier grasslands. Forest cover thinned, shade became rare, prey moved farther in search of water, and our ancestors followed, step by deliberate step, across open terrain. Picture those steps, endless, hot, shimmering with heat waves that rose from the savanna floor. Walking like this was not a gentle hobby. It was survival. The bodies of these early humans were already changing. Longer legs for striding, narrower hips for efficiency, and a rib cage built to support deeper, steadier breathing. They were becoming creatures of distance, but their thick coats, inherited from earlier hominins, began to betray them. Fur holds heat close. It traps warm air around the body. In forests, this works well. In open plains under direct sun, it becomes a liability. The earliest hints of hair thinning likely arrived quietly, not as a sudden shift, but as a slow reduction. Generations faced heat stress, dehydration, the quiet dangers of overheating. Natural selection, steady and patient, began sculpting new bodies better suited to long hours under a burning sky. But staying cool was only one thread of the story. The deeper truth is that hairlessness wasn't just about heat. It was about our ancestors taking on a role no other primate dared, moving across landscapes for hours, even during midday, when most predators rested. Homo erectus became the first hominin capable of regular endurance travel at noon, when the sun was most unforgiving. To do this safely, they needed more than strong legs. They needed a cooling system no other mammal had mastered. That system was sweat, specifically the extraordinary density of eccrine sweat glands humans now possess, up to 10 times more than most mammals. Sweating requires exposed skin. Thick hair blocks evaporation, so as sweat glands expanded their role, fur receded. The two systems moved in tandem, balancing each other. Every lost patch of fur represented a tiny advantage, evaporating more efficiently, cooling faster, walking farther without overheating. Over thousands of generations, those advantages accumulated. Yet this transformation must have been strange to witness within the species itself. Some individuals would have carried more hair, some less. Some lineages may have clung to thicker coats, others shedding rapidly depending on local pressures. The fossil record can't show fur, but it can show bone proportions that reveal behavioral changes. By 1.5 million years ago, we see longer lower limbs, shorter arms, and pelvis shapes optimized for distance running, all hints of a creature trying something new. And this newness was not subtle, it was transformative. The landscape was reshaping our ancestors, and in turn, they were reshaping how a primate could survive. Under that sun, bare skin also became vulnerable. UV radiation burns. Without fur, early humans needed protection. Melanin stepped into this evolutionary negotiation, deepening skin pigmentation and acting as a natural shield. This was not an aesthetic shift. This was survival, a biochemical response to the world's most powerful environmental force. Already, this early stage of hairlessness demanded a coordinated cascade of adaptations. Losing fur cannot happen alone. It triggers a chain reaction: sweat glands, pigmentation, behavior, group movement, timing of hunts. Hairlessness became a package, not a single mutation. And yet, as the fur thinned, something unexpected happened. Bare skin became a surface for emotion. Muscles under the skin created micro-expressions more visible than before. A flash of concern, a raised brow, a flicker of fear or joy. These signals, once muted beneath hair, now traveled freely across the face and body. Social communication grew sharper, more immediate. Trust became easier to read. Cooperation, vital for hunting, gathering, and raising young, strengthened. Hairlessness, though rooted in physiology, began shaping psychology. Our ancestors did not know they were transforming. They simply walked, breathed, sweated, hunted, survived. But across thousands of dawns and sunsets, they drifted farther from their primate past. Each generation bore slightly less fur. Each generation stepped closer to looking like us. And as we leave this opening moment, the story is already unfolding. A species poised between its animal past and its human future, standing on the edge of the savanna with skin touched by sun and wind, ready to move deeper into the world it was slowly evolving to master. The sun becomes the next great sculptor of the human body. And as we move into the second chapter of this long transformation, heat begins to take center stage. Not a mild warmth, but an unforgiving, endless blaze that rolled across East Africa around 1.5 million years ago. Climatic records show expanding savannas replacing denser woodlands, creating open environments where shade was scarce and distances between resources grew wider every millennium. Early Homo erectus did not merely inhabit this landscape, they pushed deeper into it than any primate before them. Their survival strategy required traveling farther, staying exposed longer, and enduring conditions that would have driven most mammals to collapse. And with each passing century, the demands of heat and distance slowly nudged our ancestors toward a body better equipped for the furnace-like plains. Imagine watching them from a rise overlooking the Rift Valley. Tall, long-legged, shoulders rolling in rhythm, each stride steady and unbroken. They moved with a purpose different from other creatures. Lions hunted in bursts, hyenas scouted and retreated. But humans, proto-humans really, walked and walked and walked. This was distance as destiny. Fossilized footprints from Lake Turkana show individuals pacing across wide-open flats with a gait startlingly similar to ours, hinting at a species evolving around movement. Yet every one of those steps carried a cost. Heatstroke lurked behind every miscalculated hour beneath the noon sky. Even a brief failure to cool could threaten a life. Natural selection, silent and persistent, began filtering bodies by their ability to handle that heat. The relationship between fur and heat is complicated, and early researchers once imagined that fur alone made life unbearable. But the real truth is more subtle. Fur can protect against direct sunlight. Many animals use thick coats to block UV radiation and stabilize body temperature. The trouble arises not in standing still, but in moving. Movement generates heat, and vigorous movement under an equatorial sun turns a body into a furnace. The early hominins were increasingly active, journeying across wide ranges to forage, track prey, and reach water. Thick coats trapped the heat of exertion, preventing efficient cooling. A single hour of continuous walking in the sun could become dangerous. 2 hours might be deadly. So nature began favoring individuals who could shed heat more easily. As fur thinned, another system expanded in tandem: the eccrine sweat glands that today allow humans to drench themselves in cooling moisture. By the time hairlessness was becoming pronounced, our ancestors were already masters of evaporative cooling. Their bodies had transformed into engines built for endurance. They could outwalk predators. They could chase prey until it collapsed. They could travel between scattered food sources without collapsing from the heat. This ability gave them a competitive edge so dramatic that it reshaped their entire niche within the ecosystem. But before that transformation fully took hold, there was a transitional period, perhaps thousands of generations, when our ancestors still had partial coats, yet were pushing themselves harder than their hairier bodies could tolerate. These were the critical centuries of evolutionary pressure, when survival hinged on the smallest advantage: a slightly less dense coat, a slightly higher capacity for sweating, a slightly more pigmented patch of skin to shield against radiation. One can imagine the early groups finding relief near watering holes, cooling their bodies before moving on, the sun beating on backs that were slowly, steadily shifting from furred to bare. It's important to understand just how extreme the savanna environment was for a primate. Daytime temperatures commonly soared above 40 degrees to 104 degrees Celsius. Ground surfaces could climb even higher. Trees were sparse and widely spaced, offering little refuge. Most mammals avoided long daytime exposure entirely. Many rested in shade or burrows. But humans were becoming ecological outliers, the rare creature that moved when others hid. This pattern gave Homo erectus access to fresh carcasses before scavengers arrived, allowed them to track injured animals long after predators gave up, and opened territories previously unreachable for heavily furred mammals. Heat wasn't the only pressure. Distance itself exerted evolutionary influence. Traveling far requires conserving energy, and sweating, though powerful, is costly in water. So bodies became more efficient, limbs elongated, feet strengthened, hair density reduced to minimize insulation. Walking upright helped reduce the surface area exposed to direct sun. The narrower pelvis and cylindrical chest helped dissipate heat vertically rather than trapping it. Every anatomical shift, though subtle, improved movement through open country. As these changes accumulated, a strange paradox began to unfold. The more hair early humans lost, the more dependent they became on environmental resources to regulate temperature. Shade became precious, wind became a friend, water became essential. Bare skin required these elements to complete the cooling process. But in relying on them, humans also developed behaviors to seek them out consistently. Seasonal movements followed riverbanks, camps were chosen for breezes, travel patterns shifted to maximize cooling. Behavior shaped evolution, and evolution shaped behavior. Look closely at modern humans, and you still see the signature of this ancient negotiation with the sun. Our bodies have a density of sweat glands unmatched by almost any other mammal. Our muscles generate enormous heat, yet we can run for hours under conditions that would incapacitate most animals. Our skin, darkened by melanin in equatorial populations, forms a natural armor against solar radiation. All these traits began taking root during the period when heat and distance ruled our ancestors' lives. And as the savanna expanded, groups that adapted well to heat thrived while others dwindled. These shifts weren't instantaneous or dramatic, they were slow, patient, selective. But over enough generations, they reshaped what being human meant. The once furred primate now carried a distinct ecological role. A daytime endurance traveler shaped by the sun itself. Cooling became a survival skill. Distance became an identity. The savanna carved this lineage with relentless precision. By the end of this era, humans were no longer merely apes adapting to heat, they were creatures mastering it. The sun did not drive them into hiding, it pushed them into becoming something new. And every step across that shimmering golden grassland moved them one step closer to full hairlessness, forging the foundation for the physical and social revolutions still ahead. By the time our ancestors began drifting deeper into the open savannas, their bodies were already engaged in a quiet, internal negotiation, one that unfolded through countless generations, shaping skin, glands, endurance, and identity. At the center of this shift lies a simple principle. The more efficiently a body can shed heat, the farther it can move, the longer it can hunt, and the safer it becomes under an unforgiving sun. And so, the human cooling engine began to evolve, refining itself step by step until our lineage became the sweatiest, most heat-tolerant primate on Earth. To understand how extraordinary this adaptation was, imagine the body of an early Homo erectus around 1.5 million years ago. The torso was broad and powerful, the legs long and built for distance, and the head carried a brain that was slowly increasing in size, but it was the skin that held the greatest secret. Beneath the surface, scattered all across the body, millions of eccrine sweat glands were beginning to outcompete the older, oilier apocrine glands common in other mammals. This shift was not cosmetic, it was revolutionary. Eccrine glands release a thin, watery sweat ideal for evaporation. To take advantage of this evaporative power, the skin had to be exposed. Fur blocked airflow. Fur trapped moisture. Fur prevented the rapid evaporation needed to cool a body in motion. And so, as sweating intensified, hair thinned. The loss of fur was not sudden. It likely began regionally, perhaps on the back where heat accumulated, or on the limbs that drove long-distance movement. Over thousands of generations, selective pressures trimmed these regions further. Individuals with slightly less hair gained a measurable advantage. They could walk or jog longer before overheating. A few minutes mattered. Over the long run of evolutionary time, those few minutes per day translated into higher survival rates, better access to food, and more reproductive success. The cycle reinforced itself. Less hair led to more sweating capacity. More sweating allowed greater endurance. Greater endurance favored the traits that reduced hair even more. Slowly, the hairless ape emerged. This process didn't just alter physiology, it rewrote behavior. As sweating became the primary cooling strategy, early humans were no longer bound to shade. They could operate during the hottest hours of the day, when many predators rested and prey animals struggled with heat. This opened a new hunting technique still practiced by certain groups today: persistence hunting. In persistence hunting, the goal is not to ambush prey, but to run it to exhaustion. Humans lack speed compared to antelope, but they excel in maintaining a steady pace across hours. The prey overheats. The humans do not. Sweating, and the bare skin that made it possible, was the key. Even at walking speeds, the ability to dissipate heat shaped the daily rhythm of early human life. Camps could be placed further from water sources if groups learned how to ration sweat and manage hydration. Movements across the savanna grew more ambitious. Exploratory ranges widened. And as ranges widened, so too did opportunities, new food sources, new territories, new interactions with other hominin groups. Hairlessness wasn't simply a bodily change. It was a gateway to a new ecological niche built on endurance. Yet losing fur introduced vulnerabilities. Skin exposed to the sun burns easily. UV radiation damages tissue and threatens long-term health. This is where melanin stepped in as a protective adaptation. Without hair to shield the skin, pigmentation intensified, forming a natural sunscreen produced by melanocytes. This partnership, hairlessness paired with dark pigmentation, became the hallmark of early human identity. It also marks one of evolution's most fascinating trade-offs. Our ancestors sacrificed insulation and physical protection for the power of sweat, then invented a chemical shield to compensate for the loss. As sweating became the dominant cooling method, other systems adjusted. The salt concentration of sweat evolved to balance heat reduction with hydration needs. Blood vessels near the skin surface became more efficient at radiating heat. Metabolic rates shifted to manage internal temperature while still powering long-distance travel. This was a full-body renegotiation with the environment, and the controlling factor was the simplest, clearest measure of survival under the sun. Don't overheat. We often imagine evolution as dramatic leaps, but in truth, this change happened through small, almost invisible variations. A child born with slightly fewer body hairs than its parents might have had only a marginal advantage, but across geological timescales, that margin reshaped the lineage. The fossil record doesn't preserve hair, but it preserves clues. Narrower pelvises for more efficient gait, limb proportions optimized for heat dissipation, skull features that help regulate temperature. Each bone fragment is a whisper of the cooling revolution. The psychological implications were profound as well. Bare skin made group members more visible to one another. It changed how individuals recognized subtle cues, sweat patterns, muscle tension, early signs of heat stress. Cooperation improved when bodies became easier to interpret. Fur, in a sense, muffles expression. Bare skin amplifies it. And in amplifying expression, hairlessness helped strengthen the bonds that held early groups together. One fascinating layer of this story is that humans are not the only mammal to trade fur for sweat dominance. but we are the only one to push it to this extreme. Horses share a similar sweat-based cooling system, though with far fewer eccrine glands than humans. Dogs pant, cats rest to avoid heat, primates cling to shade. But humans built an entire survival strategy around the ability to shed heat while moving. Losing fur was a sacrifice with a massive payoff. It allowed a primate to walk like no other. Toward the end of this evolutionary era, the combination of abundant sweat glands, reduced body hair, and increasing melanin forged the body plan that would carry future humans across continents. The strange, delicate balance had been achieved: skin ready for the sun, muscles ready for distance, and a cooling mechanism unparalleled in the animal kingdom. What began as a physiological adjustment became the cornerstone of a species that would eventually outlast rivals, endure extreme climates, and reshape the world. And so the fall of fur, paired with the rise of sweat, represents more than an anatomical shift. It marks the moment our ancestors stepped into a new identity. They were no longer defined by the warm coats of their primate relatives. They had become creatures sculpted by movement, heat, and endurance. Sweating was their signature, hairlessness was their badge, and in the endless shimmer of the savanna sun, the hairless ape found its rhythm. Endurance, not strength, not speed, became the great advantage of our evolving lineage. And in this section, we step deeper into the world where bare skin and sweat converged with a second powerful adaptation: the ability to see far, move far, and outlast nearly any creature alive. This was the hunter's horizon advantage, a perspective granted not by weaponry or intellect alone, but by biology reshaped for long-distance pursuit under an open sky. By 5 to 1 million years ago, early Homo erectus had become a specialist in a form of hunting so unusual that even today it feels almost mythic: the ability to defeat animals not by ambush or raw power, but by relentless persistence across hours. This method of hunting required a body free from the overheating dangers of fur, a cooling system built on sweat, and a visual system adept at reading landscapes stretched far into the distance. Together, these elements forged one of the most important evolutionary paths toward hairlessness. Imagine a herd of antelope grazing at dawn. When the sun is still low, every predator has an equal chance. Lions stalk the grass, hyenas sniff the wind, cheetahs crouch ready to sprint. But as the morning heat sharpens, the advantage shifts. Cheetahs cannot chase for long, lions seek shade, hyenas pace but rarely pursue into midday. Yet, a group of humans, armed with patience, endurance, and bare skin, can continue. Their upright posture exposes less surface to direct sunlight. Sweating cools their bodies even as temperatures climb. And their vision, steady and elevated, allows them to track movement across kilometers of shimmering grass. The horizon becomes their hunting ground, not the shadows. This horizon-based hunting required more than physical ability. It demanded an understanding of how animals behave under heat stress. Many ungulates pant to cool themselves. Panting works when stationary but becomes ineffective at full gallop. Humans, however, cool while running. And so the strategy emerges: force the prey into repeated bursts of sprinting until its cooling mechanism fails. The prey overheats, slows, and eventually collapses, not from injury, but from exhaustion. In this moment, the hunter approaches calmly, safely, and with minimal risk. This technique is documented in modern endurance hunters such as the Sand people of the Kalahari, providing a living window into practices that likely stretch back over 1 million years. Hairlessness gave humans the ability to participate in these high-temperature hunts. Thick fur would have made such pursuits impossible. A fully furred body pushing itself through hours of midday exertion would rapidly reach lethal temperatures. The bare skin of Homo erectus, paired with vast networks of eccrine sweat glands, kept core temperatures stable. The evolutionary impact was massive. Groups that could perform persistence hunting had more access to protein, bones full of marrow, and fat-rich organ meats, nutrients crucial for brain expansion. Thus, sweating and hairlessness indirectly fueled cognitive growth. The body supported the hunt, and the hunt supported the brain. But the hunter's horizon advantage involved more than endurance and cooling. It involved perception, how the body, especially the eyes, interacted with the open landscape. Upright posture provided a height advantage, allowing hunters to spot dust clouds stirred by fleeing animals or the subtle shift of grasses. Even today, humans can detect movement across extraordinary distances. Our visual acuity, especially motion detection, exceeds that of many mammals. This trait was likely honed by the demands of horizon tracking. To follow prey across kilometers, humans relied on cues invisible to most predators: the glint of a flank, the ripple of heat around a body, the faint disturbances along a trail. Bare skin allowed sweat to evaporate, which allowed hunters to move for hours, which allowed them to keep their eyes fixed on the horizon without collapsing from heat stress. Hairlessness became a prerequisite for the hunter's gaze. Another less obvious advantage of reduced fur was related to communication during the hunt. Bare skin made it easier for members of a hunting party to visually track each other. The shine of sweat, the movement of muscles, and even subtle posture changes were easier to see across distances. When prey changed direction, the humans pursuing it had to adapt quickly. The more clearly they could observe one another, the more coordinated their strategy became. Fur would have softened these visual cues. Bare skin made them crisp. Hunting in open terrain rewarded clarity, and the human body responded accordingly. Persistence hunting also taught early humans a new relationship with time. Most predators rely on bursts measured in seconds. Humans began thinking in hours. This shift toward long-form strategy may have shaped cognition in profound ways. Planning a multi-hour pursuit requires anticipating an animal's behavior, understanding heat patterns, predicting fatigue, and reading environmental cues. Hairlessness enabled the behavior, and the behavior expanded the mind. Evolution rarely operates in isolation. Each physical change alters the landscape of possible behaviors, and those behaviors, in turn, favor certain cognitive pathways. Fossil evidence from this period supports a body increasingly optimized for endurance. Limb proportions in Homo erectus are nearly identical to modern humans in terms of walking efficiency. The nuchal ligament, absent in apes, present in humans, helps stabilize the head during running. Enlarged semicircular canals in the inner ear indicate improved balance during rapid movement. These clues together paint a picture of a species built not for restful shade, but for the heat of the horizon. And all of these traits point toward the same conclusion. Hairlessness, sweating, and endurance evolved as an integrated suite. Enemies of distance still existed. Heat was not conquered entirely. Dehydration threatened every hunt. Shade remained precious. But the trend was unmistakable. Humans were becoming the only ape capable of purposeful midday pursuit, and this pursuit reshaped their identity. The savanna was no longer a dangerous expanse to be crossed, it was a tool to be used. By forcing animals into the open where they overheated, humans used the sun itself as a weapon. Hairlessness sharpened that weapon. This new hunting style also had social consequences. Hunts required cooperation, endurance, and an understanding of each member's role. Groups grew more cohesive, communication improved, food sharing increased, strengthening bonds within the clan. Bare skin, which had originally evolved for cooling, now played an indirect role in social cohesion, an unexpected twist in the evolutionary story. By the end of this era, early humans were no longer simple foragers adapting to the heat. They were horizon hunters who used the sun as an ally. Fur had no place in this world. Sweat became the signature of survival, and the open savannas echoed with the steady footsteps of a species that had found its stride. Long before humans became masters of fire, language, or tools, they faced an enemy that could slip between hairs, cling to skin, and spread deadly pathogens with a single bite. And so, alongside heat and endurance, one of the strangest and most overlooked drivers of human hairlessness emerged: the battle against parasites and the itch of survival. To understand the magnitude of this pressure, we must imagine the environment 1.5 million years ago. Not just the landscape, but the ecosystem of insects. The savannas teemed with ticks, lice, fleas, and biting flies, each eager to exploit mammals with dense coats. For many species, fur acts as protection, a barrier too thick for parasites to penetrate easily. But for primates whose hair is already comparatively sparse, the coverage is enough to shelter parasites, but not enough to block them. Early Homo erectus, moving constantly across grasslands and sleeping in open areas, were exposed to the worst of these insects. Parasites did more than irritate. They spread diseases that could cripple or kill. Fleas carried bacterial infections, ticks transmitted fevers, lice spread pathogens that weakened immune systems. In small, tightly connected groups, a single parasite-borne disease could sweep through a clan and reduce its survival chances dramatically. Individuals with slightly less hair would be less attractive environments for parasites to nest and reproduce, especially in regions where food scarcity or heat stress already strained the body. A body with fewer hairs provides fewer hiding places. Parasites are easier to spot. Grooming becomes more effective, and in this subtle advantage, evolution found another reason to reduce the coat. Grooming behavior in primates is central to social life. Apes spend considerable time checking one another for insects, a process that strengthens bonds within a group. But as early humans began traveling longer distances, their grooming time may have shifted. Hours spent walking, tracking, or foraging competed with hours once devoted to parasite maintenance. In this new lifestyle, a body that naturally accumulated fewer parasites held an advantage. Less grooming required, fewer infections, more time for vital tasks. A slight reduction in hair could mean an increase in daily productivity, a subtle but measurable boost in evolutionary fitness. One fascinating piece of evidence comes not from fossils, but from the parasites themselves, specifically human lice. Modern humans carry two major types of lice, head lice and body lice. Genetic studies show that body lice diverged from head lice roughly 170,000 years ago, a point often associated with the emergence of clothing. But even earlier, the divergence between human lice and chimpanzee lice suggests an ancient shift in the hair environment of our species, one that aligns roughly with the timeline of Homo erectus and the first major wave of hair reduction. In other words, the parasites adapted to our changing bodies, not the other way around. Yet the relationship between parasites and hairlessness was not limited to lice. Ticks pose a deadly threat to animals living in grassy environments. A thick fur coat provides them with dozens of sheltered entry points, behind the ears, under the limbs, through soft belly fur. A hairless body, by contrast, leaves ticks exposed and easy to detect. For early humans, who slept on the ground, moved through tall grass, and lived in close physical proximity to one another, tick-borne diseases may have been a major selective pressure. Individuals whose bodies offered fewer anchor points for ticks stood a better chance of survival. There is also the problem of heat combined with parasites. Warm, moist environments beneath fur create ideal breeding grounds for microbial infections. As early humans sweated more, these microclimates inside thick coats could have become increasingly dangerous. Hairlessness eliminated these pockets of moisture, reducing fungal and bacterial risks. A bare, sun-exposed surface dries quickly, making it harder for infections to take hold. The very system humans used to cool themselves also supported the shift toward smoother skin. Parasites influence behavior as well. A furred primate must avoid too much proximity to other species that serve as parasite reservoirs. But humans were developing a lifestyle that depended on interacting with carcasses, remains, and scavenged materials. Persistence hunting often ended in close contact with hot, exhausted prey, animals covered in their own parasites. The fewer places these insects could transfer onto human skin, the better. A naked body could be brushed clean with a hand. Fur, once contaminated, could harbor parasites for days. By reducing hair, humans also changed their visibility to one another. Parasites often cause visible skin reactions, redness, swelling, irritations. On bare skin, these signs were easier to recognize, allowing group members to identify health problems quickly. A partner showing signs of parasitic infection could be encouraged to rest, groom, or take shelter, improving group survival rates. Fur conceals symptoms, bare skin reveals them, and revelation, in the evolutionary sense, can be protective. We might imagine an early human clan settling near a water source. The nights are warm, the wind is low. Individuals sleep together, backs exposed to the sky. Some wake itching, others less so. Over time, the pattern repeats. Fewer parasites on those with less body hair, more infections among those with dense patches. The clan's collective memory sharpens around these patterns. Less hair means fewer dangers. Though no one consciously understood evolution, selection was silently at work. Parasites also created pressure on sexual selection. Healthy skin became a signal of fitness. Scar-free, clean surfaces indicated fewer infections and better immune systems. As hair thinned, skin visibility increased, and with it, mate preferences may have shifted. A partner whose skin appeared clear and unblemished was likely to have fewer parasites, fewer diseases, and better long-term reproductive prospects. Sexual selection often accelerates evolutionary trends, and in this case, it may have hastened the move toward hairlessness. Over time, the interplay between parasites and skin helped define the human form. Every reduction of fur came with fewer hiding spots for insects. Every increase in sweating improved temperature regulation. Every improvement in hygiene or grooming built upon the advantages of bare skin. By the time these forces stabilized, hairlessness had become a defining trait, one that set our lineage apart not only from other apes, but from almost every mammal. As the savanna expanded and humans moved through environments rich in biting insects, the hairless body became a shield, a living defense system shaped by countless generations, facing predators too small to see but powerful enough to shape evolution. In the quiet nighttime scratching, in the red welts on the skin, in the daily struggle to avoid infection, humanity's future was being forged. In this section, we explore how early humans learned, consciously or not, to rely on breezes, rivers, sweat, and evaporation as tools for survival. These forces transformed hairless skin from a vulnerability into a biological advantage. The result was a new kind of thermoregulation, an intricate body engine that balanced the relentless input of heat with the silent evaporative power of cooling. And for more than 1 million years, this engine helped define what it meant to be human. Picture an early afternoon around 1.5 million years ago. The savanna air is shimmering. The heat presses down like a physical weight, yet a small party of Homo erectus continues moving, long strides carrying them across grasslands that stretch into a wide open world. Their bare skin gleams with sweat under the sun, but the breeze that drifts across the plains, whether gentle or fierce, turns that sweat into a cooling film. The partnership is almost magical in its simplicity. Air meets moisture, and temperature drops. In this environment, wind becomes not merely a comfort but a survival mechanism. With each gust, heat leaves the body. The more hair humans lost, the more effective this synergy became. This synergy depended on the remarkable evolution of eccrine sweat glands, which by this time numbered in the millions across the human body. While many animals sweat, few sweat the way humans do, continuously, efficiently, and across nearly the entire skin surface. Other mammals rely on panting or partial sweating. Humans turn their entire skin into a cooling canvas. And for that canvas to work, it had to be exposed. Hair insulates, sweat evaporates. The two systems oppose one another. As sweating grew more effective, hair retreated. And the less hair early humans carried, the more powerful wind and water became in cooling them. Evaporative cooling is strongest in dry air, and the East African savannas offered precisely that. Even high temperatures could be tolerated when humidity remained low, because sweat, once drawn to the skin's surface, could vanish into the wind almost instantly. This process pulled heat from the body at astonishing rates, allowing our ancestors to perform feats of endurance unmatched by other mammals. A cheetah could sprint, a human could outlast, a lion could ambush. A human could walk into the hottest hour of the day, confident that water and wind would do what fur could not, protect against overheating. Water, streams, lakes, shallow pools also played a crucial role. Early humans likely learned to wade into water not only to drink, but to cool their core temperature after exhaustive pursuits. Immersion multiplies cooling speed. Bare skin in cool water sheds heat far faster than furred skin. Even a brief moment of standing in a river could refresh an exhausted hunter. And because hairlessness reduced insulation, the water's cooling effect became immediate. Observations of modern foragers support this behavior. When heat stress builds, immersion offers instant relief, allowing groups to resume travel or hunting with renewed energy. This relationship with water may also have influenced migration patterns. Groups moved along rivers not just for resources but for temperature management. Camps were placed near water sources because they allowed humans to cool after strenuous activity. Bare skin turned lakes and streams into climatic tools. Without heavy fur to trap water against the body and risk chilling later, early humans could emerge from water already prepared to face the heat again. This interplay, wind cooling through evaporation, water cooling through conduction, formed a two-part system that strengthened the evolutionary push toward hairlessness. And as cooling improved, endurance deepened further. The body engine refined itself through multiple feedback loops. Sweating reduced heat but consumed water. Thus, early humans became more attuned to hydration patterns. Thirst cues sharpened. The ability to conserve electrolytes improved. Blood circulation adapted to balance cooling with oxygen delivery. Each of these micro-adjustments contributed to a broader transformation. A body that could move for hours in high heat without shutting down. One of the more remarkable aspects of this engine was how naturally it integrated with upright posture. By walking on two legs, humans presented less surface area to the sun compared to quadrupeds. Less surface area meant less direct heating. Wind could pass more freely across a vertical body than a horizontal one. Sweat flowing down the skin encountered unobstructed air currents. Upright posture amplified the cooling effects of both water and wind. In this way, bipedalism and hairlessness formed a mutually reinforcing pair, a system that worked better together than either trait would have alone. This environmental partnership also impacted the rhythms of daily life. Early humans likely aligned their activities with the natural movements of air and temperature. Dawn offered cool hours for travel. Midday, though hot, became a viable hunting period thanks to sweating. Afternoon winds sweeping across the grasslands refreshed overheated bodies. Evening brought slower breezes that helped dry lingering sweat. Each moment of the day brought different thermal dynamics, and hairless skin became sensitive enough to detect subtle shifts. Humans learned, instinctively, to read their environment through their skin. Wind also became a sensory guide. Bare skin detects changes in pressure and movement far more easily than furred skin. A sudden breeze might indicate a storm. A constant wind direction might help hunters track scent or smoke. Over time, early humans lived in a tactile dialogue with the savanna. The landscape communicated through shifting air, and the body answered with adjustments in posture, movement, and endurance. Fur would have muffled these signals. Hairlessness amplified them. Fire, which emerged later, added another layer. But even before firelight touched human skin, the cooling engine was carving its signature into the body. Each hair shed helped make room for a new kind of thermal intelligence, the ability to know, instinctively, when to move, when to rest, when to chase, and when to retreat. This intelligence worked hand in hand with physiology, shaping group strategies and survival patterns long before complex speech. Heat, wind, water, sweat, they formed an unspoken alliance. Humans evolved not just to survive in the savanna, but to thrive in it. Their adaptation was not brute force, but finesse, a constant negotiation between body and environment. And at the heart of this negotiation lay hairlessness, the open canvas upon which wind and water wrote the rules of endurance. By the end of this transformative era, humans were not merely heat-tolerant, they were heat-adapted in a way that made them unique among mammals. The cooling body engine was complete enough to support migrations, hunts, exploration, and social cohesion. The savanna became less a threat and more a home, and bare skin, once a vulnerability, became the very foundation of survival. We explore the birth of social skin, the idea that our nakedness became a canvas for communication, and how this unexpected shift helped strengthen cooperation, bonding, and trust within early human groups. It is here, in the shimmer of bare shoulders and the faint flush rising beneath sun-darkened skin, that the emotional intelligence of our species first found its footing. Imagine a small clan of Homo erectus lingering at their evening campsite. The day's heat fades, but the fire has not yet become central to nightly life. Social bonds still rely on gesture, posture, and observation. In apes, thick fur muffles these visual cues. A ripple of muscle beneath hair is hard to see. A change in skin tone, such as blushing or flushing, is nearly invisible. But in early humans with thinning coats, A whole new world of nonverbal expression emerged. Facial muscles, more visible on bare skin, conveyed worry, recognition, interest, or reassurance with a clarity no ape could match. Even subtle cues, like the tightening of the brow or the softening around the eyes, became legible signs of internal states. It allowed members of a group to read each other with increasing precision. A slight tremble might indicate exhaustion after a long hunt. A flushed chest might reveal excitement or stress. A sheen of sweat could signal heat strain, prompting others to halt, share water, or adjust the pace. All these cues built a shared understanding of group dynamics, improving cooperation and strengthening survival. Another remarkable advantage of hairlessness was the increase in visibility of touch. Touch is a fundamental form of bonding in primates, but in humans, with exposed skin, the effects of touch became amplified. A comforting hand on the shoulder conveyed warmth directly. A pat on the back became a physical affirmation. Grooming, now less about removing parasites and more about reinforcing social bonds, took on a new intimacy. Cooperative behavior, sharing food, defending territory, raising children, grew easier when emotional states were visible and physical contact more expressive. It is here that the concept of cooperative breeding enters the story. Early humans cared for offspring in communal networks. Mothers, siblings, elders, and unrelated individuals all played roles. Bare skin facilitated this shared responsibility. Caregivers could quickly spot signs of illness, dehydration, or injury in children. The sight of a baby's bare skin triggered stronger nurturing responses, an evolutionary pattern still seen today. Across species, infants with smoother, more exposed skin often elicit more attention from adults, as their vulnerability is more apparent. Hairlessness magnified this effect in humans, helping integrate emotional perception into family structures. As the human face lost its fur, its expressive power multiplied. The eyebrows, relatively hairless but edged by contrast, could lift, arch, fold, and communicate complex feelings. Lips, no longer hidden beneath hair, became focal points for signaling agreement, submission, curiosity, or comfort. The sclera, the white part of the eye, became visible, making gaze direction easier to track. Many scientists believe visible sclera evolved in tandem with cooperative hunting and gathering, allowing group members to communicate silently through shared attention. This trait is rare among mammals and nearly absent in other primates. Its full effectiveness depends on bare skin around the eyes, meaning hairlessness played a direct role in shaping the visual cooperation that underpins modern social behavior. An unexpected layer of adaptation also emerged: thermoregulatory expression. Bare skin reveals when a person is cold, hot, frightened, or embarrassed. Body language became richer, allowing early humans to predict the intentions or discomforts of others. This transparency reduced conflict and increased cohesion. Apes often misinterpret one another because visual cues are ambiguous beneath fur. Humans' bare skin made misunderstandings less common. As cooperation increased, during hunts, migrations, or childcare, groups that communicated well survived better. Hairlessness indirectly promoted social stability. The development of tool use, too, may have been influenced subtly by skin visibility. Working with sharp stones or carrying heavy loads required trust. If a clan member looked fatigued or frightened, the group could adjust their tasks. Safety improved. Bare skin provided early warning signs that thick fur would have concealed. And as tasks became more cooperative, the ability to sense the physical and emotional states of others grew increasingly essential. There is also a possibility, intriguing though not provable, that bare skin played a role in ritual behavior long before rituals became formal. A change in posture, a gathering of bodies in a circle, a gesture of calm reassurance. These cues would have been clearer in hairless groups. Early humans likely formed simple social rituals based on movement and visual harmony. Bare skin, as a reflective surface for emotion, helped solidify these early patterns of collective behavior. Hairless skin became a signal of health, fertility, and youth. Smoothness indicated fewer parasites. Evenness of tone suggested strong blood flow and robust immune function. Clarity of skin reflected hydration and health. These cues influenced mate choice in ways no other primate experienced. Over thousands of generations, preferences for partners with healthy-looking skin, and therefore fewer parasites and better thermoregulation, reinforced the trend toward hairlessness. In this way, social perception and reproduction acted together to refine the human form. As groups grew larger and more complex, social visibility became even more essential. Hairlessness allowed leadership, empathy, and conflict resolution to evolve on foundations of shared understanding. A raised hand, a softened gaze, a calming gesture, all visible without the obstruction of heavy fur, helped regulate group behavior. Modern humans still rely deeply on these cues, reading emotional states in micro-expressions and subtle shifts in skin tone. The roots of that sensitivity trace back to these early days when the body became a social instrument. By the time this phase of evolution stabilized, hairless skin was no longer just a thermoregulatory surface. It was a screen upon which human emotion, intention, and identity were displayed. Communication had expanded far beyond gestures and sounds. It had become embodied, visible, intimate. Without this social transformation, humanity's later leaps, language, art, symbolic culture, might never have taken shape. Thus, the strange reason humans became the only hairless ape was not just heat or parasites or hunting. It was the emergence of a species that learned to read and trust one another through the language of exposed skin. And from this emotional clarity, new forms of connection began to glow beneath the African sun, setting the stage for firelight to illuminate the naked human form in ways even more profound. Fire entered human life like a quiet miracle, uncontrolled at first, then tamed slowly, cautiously, reverently. And once it arrived, it changed not only how our ancestors cooked, stayed warm, or warded off predators, but how they saw one another. In this section, we step into the spreading glow of the first hearths and explore how firelight fell upon newly bare skin, reshaping nighttime rituals, emotional perception, and group identity. If sunlight sculpted the human body into an endurance machine, then firelight softened it, highlighting curves, revealing expressions, forging intimacy, and turning nakedness into a new kind of social signal. By 1 million years ago, fire was not yet fully mastered but was already weaving itself into the human condition, and its dance across hairless shoulders marked a turning point in how our ancestors lived together after dark. Imagine a group of Homo erectus gathered at dusk, the sky darkening, predators beginning to stir in the distance. Before fire, night was a world of shadows where only the faint glow of the moon and stars guided their interactions. Social cues became harder to interpret. Expression lost its clarity. Fear lingered at the edge of vision. But once fire became a tool, scavenged embers at first, later maintained flames, everything shifted. Firelight created a circle of safety and visibility, and on hairless skin, that light came alive. Bare skin reflects firelight beautifully. It flickers, glows, warms, and responds in ways fur never could. Thick fur absorbs shadows. Bare skin receives them. Muscles shimmer, eyes brighten, emotions become readable again even after sunset. The first hearths restored social visibility at the very moment the world outside became dangerous. This renewed visibility became a powerful selective advantage. Those who gathered around fire could maintain cohesion during the longest, darkest hours of the day. In this glow, subtle expressions, the tightening of the lips, the softness around the eyes, the lowering of shoulders after stress, became legible to others. A furred face would have swallowed these motions in shadow, but a bare one revealed them clearly. For early humans who relied heavily on cooperation, this clarity under firelight strengthened bonds. Fireside gatherings promoted calm, storytelling, even before structured language, teaching, grooming, and the soothing presence of community. Hairlessness made firelight a social amplifier. Consider how fire changed posture and movement, too. People leaned close to share warmth. They extended hands toward the blaze. They turned toward one another, illuminated in amber waves of light. These gestures, magnified on exposed skin, communicated comfort and solidarity. A parent soothing a child, a hunter demonstrating techniques with hand signals, a leader calming fearful members, all happened under firelight, and all were enhanced by the naked visibility of human bodies. Fire also changed sleep. Before its arrival, early humans likely slept lightly, curled in defensive positions, vulnerable to nocturnal predators. After fire became part of nightly routine, sleeping near it offered warmth, protection, and a sense of security. Hairlessness made this warmth even more meaningful. Furred animals risk overheating near fire. Humans, lacking insulation, could bask in its heat without danger. Evolution had unknowingly prepared the human body for a relationship with fire long before humans mastered it. Anthropologists believe that controlled fire use began appearing in the archaeological record around 1 to 1.5 million years ago. Evidence from sites like Wonderwork Cave in South Africa shows charred bones and ash deposits indicating early human groups maintained flames, even if they could not yet reliably start them. These early fires were likely small and tended carefully, and around them, hairless bodies formed circles of light, inward-facing communities that built the foundation of human nighttime culture. Firelight also played a surprising role in sexual selection. Bare skin illuminated by flame appears warm, alive, and visually expressive. Fire accentuated contours once hidden under fur. The aesthetics of hairless bodies were not created by culture alone. They were shaped by the way fire interacted with skin. Partners could judge health, fertility, and emotional states even at night, enhancing pair bonding. Smooth skin catching the light became a sign of vitality. The flush of warmth rising under the glow became an emotional signal. Fire, in this sense, became a stage upon which human bonding deepened. But fire's impact extended far beyond the social or aesthetic. It invited storytelling into human life. Even before language had structure, humans shared sound, rhythm, gesture, and emotional tone. Bare skin allowed these gestures to be clearly seen, creating early forms of group teaching and memory transmission. A teacher demonstrating how to nap a hand axe could use hands, body posture, and expression to guide others. Fur would have concealed much of this. Fire and hairlessness formed a partnership that elevated nighttime learning. There is also a thermoregulatory dimension to this relationship. As humans lost fur, they became more vulnerable at night, when temperatures dropped and wind chilled unprotected skin. Fire compensated for this vulnerability. It offered warmth that filled the evolutionary gap left by hair. This allowed humans to sleep comfortably in colder climates and remain active after sunset. The social day lengthened. Bare skin, which once risked chilling easily, now found balance through fire's heat. This synergy between hairlessness and fire may have encouraged humans to expand into regions where nighttime temperatures were harsher. Firelight also deterred predators, granting humans psychological ease. With reduced body hair, early humans were quieter sleepers. They lacked the muffling of fur and relied more on group cohesion for protection. Fire's safety glow enabled larger sleep clusters, promoting social resilience. In these clusters, people could observe one another more clearly and respond quickly to distress. Bare skin made it easier to spot trembling from cold, signs of dehydration, or early symptoms of illness. Fire extended the utility of exposed skin from daytime to nighttime. A deeper layer of this story involves identity. Before fire, humans were diurnal creatures. After fire, they became twilight beings, sharing meals, grooming, observing the flames, and forming deeper bonds. Hairless skin played a symbolic role in this new environment, creating a contrast between the illuminated self and the shadowed world beyond. It framed humans as creatures both vulnerable and adaptable, capable of reshaping their environment to protect the very nakedness evolution had given them. By the end of this era, hairlessness and fire had merged into a cultural and biological partnership. Fire brought warmth where fur was lost. Hairlessness brought visibility where firelight shone. Together, they created a space for society to flourish after dark. The human story of connection, trust, storytelling, intimacy unfolded in this glow. And though the world outside the fire's reach remained wild and dangerous, within the light, humans began discovering not just survival, but meaning. While heat, parasites, and endurance shaped the physical reasons for becoming hairless, scent shaped the social and reproductive ones. As body hair dwindled, the human smell changed. Less musk, less animal heaviness, more subtle signals tied to health, hormones, emotion, and individuality. And in the world of early humans, scent wasn't a cosmetic detail. It was a powerful force guiding survival and choice. To understand the magnitude of this change, picture a furred primate. dense hair covering the body, trapping oils and microbial communities that produce strong animal scents. Much of a mammal's odor comes from compounds held within the fur. These scents carry messages: sexual readiness, territory marking, stress hormones, and immune system compatibility. Apes still live in this biochemical world. But as humans lost their fur, the dynamics of scent communication shifted dramatically. Hairless skin, exposed to sun, wind, and water, released odors differently. Sweat evaporated quickly. Oils dispersed rather than accumulated. The most intense scent zones became localized: the scalp, groin, and armpits, areas where humans retained apocrine glands that produce thicker, more odor-rich secretions. The rest of the body, dominated by eccrine glands, released saltwater sweat that cooled the body with little scent. This created a mosaic of smells that conveyed more nuanced information: fitness, hydration, stress level, hormonal state. And without fur trapping these scents, early humans likely smelled cleaner than most mammals, at least during non-exertion periods. This relative cleanliness carried evolutionary advantages. Individuals with fewer foul or persistent odors attracted fewer parasites and drew less unwanted attention from predators. Moreover, among humans themselves, a milder baseline scent made the more meaningful signals stand out: pheromone-like compounds related to fertility, health, and emotional state. Bearskin made these signals clearer and more immediate, strengthening pair bonds and influencing mate choice. Studies of modern humans reveal something remarkable. Our sense of smell, though less acute than that of dogs, is highly specialized in detecting social cues, especially those linked to immune system compatibility, MHC markers. People can often unconsciously identify genetically compatible partners by scent. This ability may have roots in our hairless past, when exposed skin allowed scent patterns to be read more easily. Hair, by contrast, muddles signals by holding onto environmental odors: soil, plants, smoke, decay. Bare skin presented a truer chemical portrait of the individual. Now, imagine an early human campsite. Before language, before symbolic culture, scent helped individuals recognize kin, track group members, and detect stress or illness within the clan. A frightened person emits compounds detectable on the air. A calm, confident leader has a different chemical signature. A nursing mother smells distinct from a forager returning from a long hunt. These details mattered profoundly in a species that relied heavily on cooperation. Hairlessness allowed these scents to disperse rapidly and honestly. A lie cannot be hidden in scent. Early humans lived within this honesty. As hair thinned further, humans developed more pronounced apocrine zones in the armpits and groin, areas linked deeply to reproductive signaling. This is not coincidence. In many mammals, apocrine glands release chemical messages related to sexual readiness and social status. But in humans, the loss of fur made these areas even more potent communicators of attraction. As visual cues grew through bare skin, chemical cues evolved in parallel. Attraction became multimodal: sight, scent, posture, and touch interacting in complex ways. The armpits, rich in apocrine glands, became scent reservoirs that could broadcast health and hormonal information. During physical exertion, emotional stress, or intimacy, these areas released compounds that signaled readiness, weakness, or desire. The groin, similarly, retained dense hair not as a remnant, but as a strategic choice. Hair helps trap and disperse pheromone-like molecules in reproductive contexts. The fact that humans kept hair in only a few regions reveals something important. Hair wasn't lost randomly. It was sculpted by selection to preserve certain social signals while eliminating others. Hairlessness also altered how humans interacted with environmental scents. Without fur to trap odors of sweat, blood, or dead animals, humans became less detectable by predators when washed by rain or cooled by wind. This offered a subtle hunting advantage. Persistence hunters could rinse their bodies in water, reducing their scent signature before resuming the chase. This is not speculation. Modern hunter-gatherers often use water to mask or reduce smell during hunts. But perhaps the most profound impact of scent lies in pair bonding. Humans are unusual among primates in forming long-term partnerships. Scent helped reinforce these bonds. Partners recognized one another by smell. Infants recognized mothers. Families recognized kin. Hairlessness allowed these identifications to be accurate and reliable. Without fur-absorbing environmental odors, the true scent of a person remained easier to detect. Bonds deepened. Trust grew. Bare skin also changed the psychology of proximity. In many mammals, thick fur reduces the intensity of scent at close range. In humans, closeness brings stronger, more intimate exposure to someone's scent signature. This heightened intimacy likely strengthened long-term relationships. When partners slept close at night, sharing warmth near the fire, their scents mingled with memories, emotions, and safety. This may seem poetic, but evolution often operates through such emotional mechanisms, shaping behavior through the comfort or discomfort that scent evokes. There is another layer to this story: scent as a health indicator. In a hairless species, illness could be detected through changes in smell. Infections, dehydration, stress, or malnutrition alter the chemical composition of sweat and oils. Group members could detect these changes, allowing them to respond, offering help, adjusting workloads, or distancing themselves to avoid contagion. Hairlessness made disease signals clearer and more actionable. By 500,000 years ago, long after the first wave of hair reduction, humans had developed a complex chemical communication system intertwined with social behavior. Even as language began to emerge slowly, scent remained an essential foundation for trust, attraction, and group cohesion. To this day, scent plays a subtle but powerful role in human relationships. Parents recognize infants by smell, partners prefer the scent of those they love, and emotional states can be transmitted chemically between people. And so, the strange reason humans became the only hairless ape extends beyond physiology and climate. It includes the evolution of a species whose identity was shaped by the chemistry of its own skin. Hairlessness created a new kind of scent, a new intimacy, and a new clarity in how humans met, bonded, and lived together. In a world where survival depended on cooperation and connection, this invisible language of the skin played a role as significant as any tool or weapon. As hairlessness swept across the human lineage, a new dilemma rose with full force, one carved not by predators, parasites, or hunger, but by the sun itself. Bare skin, exposed to the open savanna, became vulnerable to ultraviolet radiation in a way furred bodies never had been. And so, in this section, we step into one of the most consequential evolutionary negotiations in our history: the rise of melanin, the silent shield that defended early humans from solar warfare. Migration patterns, climate zones, and shifting ecological pressures shaped the palette of human skin long before culture or geography drew borders. This story is not about color as identity. It's about color as survival, adaptation, and resilience in a world where the sun itself became a selective force. To understand this transformation, imagine the moment early humans began losing their fur. At first, patches of skin were exposed: shoulders, backs, limbs, faces. These regions endured more direct sunlight than any primate's bare skin had before. Heat was one problem, UV radiation was another. Ultraviolet rays damage DNA, break down folate, a nutrient critical for brain development and reproduction, and increase the risk of skin cancer. For a species with growing brains, longer gestation, and increasing social complexity, folate was precious. Any environmental factor that depleted it threatened reproductive success directly. Thus, as hairlessness progressed, melanin stepped forward as a biochemical guardian. Melanin's role was simple, yet profound: absorb and disperse ultraviolet radiation, preventing cellular damage. This protection was especially crucial near the equator, where UV exposure strikes with maximal intensity year-round. As early Homo erectus roamed the open savannas of East Africa, individuals with higher melanin levels had stronger defenses against folate loss and tissue damage. Their offspring were healthier. Their reproductive success increased. Generation after generation, darker pigmentation spread across the human lineage. This adaptation became so central to survival that it formed one of the strongest examples of natural selection in human evolution. Genetic studies reveal that genes linked to dark pigmentation, particularly MC1R, show remarkably little variation among African populations compared to Europeans or Asians. This suggests strong selective pressure early in human evolution to maintain dark, protective skin as hairlessness advanced. Nature was unambiguous. If the body was to go bare, it needed armor. But melanin did more than protect. It balanced the delicate interplay between heat regulation and vitamin synthesis. UV radiation also helps produce vitamin D, essential for bone development and immune function. Too much melanin in low UV environments, however, can lead to deficiency. This created a tension. Dark skin was essential in equatorial Africa, but as humans began migrating northward into regions with weaker sunlight, selection favored slightly lighter pigmentation to allow enough vitamin D production. This balancing act, protection versus synthesis, became one of the defining themes of human global dispersal. Before we explore migration, though, we must understand the deeper implications of melanin in early African populations. These humans were not choosing color. They were adapting to survive in a world where the sun dictated the conditions of life. Naked skin under intense UV needed a shield, and melanin provided one, quietly, efficiently, elegantly. Picture a midday persistence hunt. The hunters pursue antelope across scorching plains. Their skin, deeply pigmented, absorbs and redirects the sun's rays. Sweat glistens across muscles built for endurance. Each droplet cools them as it evaporates. Without melanin, their skin would burn, blister, and weaken. Without sweat, their bodies would overheat. Without hairlessness, sweat would fail to evaporate efficiently. This trinity, bare skin, sweat, and melanin, formed an integrated survival system. Later, as humans ventured along river valleys, coastlines, and grasslands, carrying fire, stone tools, and social complexity, their pigmentation continued adapting to their surroundings. Around 100 to 60,000 years ago, the first major waves of Homo sapiens began leaving Africa. Those who settled in the Middle East retained dark skin. Sunlight remained strong. But groups pushing into Central Asia, Europe, and eventually Siberia encountered weaker, more seasonal UV. Here, the dark pigmentation that once protected them became disadvantageous. Vitamin D deficiency could cause brittle bones, weakened immune systems, and reproductive challenges. Gradually, over thousands of years, skin lightened in these regions, not to become better, but to balance the equation of survival. This is why modern human skin tones vary in gradients across the world, not according to cultural divisions, but according to the planetary dance of latitude, season, altitude, and cloud cover. At high altitudes, UV exposure increases despite colder temperatures, so populations living in mountains often retain darker skin. In cloudy northern climates, lighter skin offers an advantage by maximizing vitamin D production during short daylight periods. This complex interplay shows how sensitive human evolution was to environmental pressures. But in the earliest chapters of our story, the world of Homo erectus, the priority was unambiguous. Dark pigmentation protected the newly naked body during the most intense UV exposure periods. Hairlessness had opened a vulnerability, and melanin closed it. Without this adaptation, natural selection may have reversed hair reduction, or early humans may never have expanded far beyond shaded environments. Melanin also had social effects, though not in the ways modern societies imagine. In early human groups, skin tone would not have been a marker of status, identity, or division. Rather, it signaled fitness, resilience, and health. Healthy skin, regardless of shade, reflected proper hydration, minimal infection, and adequate nutrition. The visibility of skin tone changes, flushes, paleness, bruises, helped clans assess the condition of each member. Melanin provided a stable baseline upon which these signals could still be seen. The development of scalp hair, another unique feature of the human body, further complements this story. While most body hair receded, scalp hair remained dense, a protective canopy against solar radiation for the brain, the organ that would come to define humanity itself. The brain produces immense heat and is sensitive to temperature fluctuations. Protecting it with hair while allowing the rest of the body to cool through sweating was an elegant compromise. Melanin deepened in this region too, strengthening the shield. As humans spread globally, this interplay between hair, skin, sweat, and sunlight carried forward, shaping every population in response to local UV conditions. But the roots of this diversity lie in the earliest African ancestors whose bare skin met the relentless sun for the first time, and survived because melanin rose to meet the challenge. In the end, the strange reason humans became hairless apes cannot be separated from the rise of pigmentation. The sun sculpted us as surely as hunger or fear or curiosity. Skin color became a map of migration, an archive of ancient climates, a testament to the resilience of a lineage willing to walk naked into places no other ape could endure. Even as the great wave of hairlessness swept across the human body, leaving arms, legs, torso, and face bare beneath the African sun, some patches of hair remained. These surviving islands of fur hold secrets older than agriculture, older than language, older even than the widening of our ancestors' brains. In this section, we explore the curious places where hair refused to disappear: the scalp, the armpits, the groin, the eyebrows, and the faint trails across the forearms. Each of these locations survived the purge for a reason. Evolution does not waste energy maintaining something useless. Every preserved patch tells a story about ancient behavior, sexual signaling, protection, or identity. To understand why humans became selectively hairless, not fully naked like dolphins, not fully furred like chimps, we must study the hair that stayed behind. Let's begin with the most obvious survivor: scalp hair. Unlike body hair, which thinned drastically, hair atop the human head grew longer and denser than that of any ape. This was no accident. The brain, expanding dramatically after 2 million years ago, became humanity's most valuable organ, and also its most temperature-sensitive. Running persistence hunts under a brutal sun required a cooling system for the body, but the head still needed protection. Scalp hair acts like a parasol, shading the skull, deflecting direct sunlight, and reducing the risk of heat stroke. Experiments show that even tightly curled hair, the kind common among early Homo populations, reduces solar heating of the scalp significantly. Thus, as the body shed its fur, the head held onto its crown. Hair became a protective layer for the brain in a landscape where overheating could be fatal. Next, consider eyebrows, small, expressive arches of hair whose purpose seems subtle but vital. Eyebrows keep sweat, rain, and debris from entering the eyes. During endurance hunts, sweat poured down the faces of early humans, and eyebrows helped divert moisture away from vision. Without them, clarity of sight, essential for reading horizons, tracking prey, and detecting danger, would have suffered. But eyebrows also evolved as tools of communication. Their movements express surprise, doubt, friendliness, or warning. In a world where hairlessness amplified emotional visibility, eyebrows became bold punctuation marks on the human face. Even today, they anchor identity. Shaving them entirely transforms someone's appearance beyond recognition. Their persistence reveals how crucial micro-expression became to social cohesion. Then, there is facial hair, which behaves differently for men and women, hinting at sexual selection's deep influence. Early males likely evolved thicker beards not for warmth, but for signaling maturity, dominance, and reproductive status. In many primates, males advertise their strength through visual markers. Silverback gorillas display silver hair, mandrills show vivid facial coloration. In humans, the beard became such a marker. As the rest of the body lost hair, beards gained prominence, potentially making it easier to distinguish adult males from juveniles or females in complex social groups. This mattered in species where cooperation and competition coexisted. The beard was never about insulation, it was about identity. Now we move to one of the most revealing survivors, armpit hair. Why keep it? The answer lies in chemical communication. Armpits contain dense apocrine glands, which release thicker, hormone-rich secretions tied to emotion, stress, and sexual signaling. Hair in these areas acts like a diffuser, capturing and spreading scent molecules that convey biological information. These chemical cues, from fertility to mood, played a powerful role long before language. As humans lost hair elsewhere, preserving hair in scent-rich zones ensured that this silent communication remained intact. Armpit hair was an evolutionary billboard for emotional and reproductive messages that mattered deeply to early humans, navigating social and mating networks. Even more important, perhaps, is pubic hair. Its purpose mirrors that of armpit hair but focuses on reproductive signaling. During adolescence, pubic hair appears as a marker of sexual maturity, advertising readiness for reproduction. It also traps pheromone-like compounds that may have influenced mate choice. In a hairless species, these regions became the last strongholds of mammalian scent logic, the places where chemical identity still whispered through the air. Pubic hair also serves protective functions, cushioning the skin during movement or mating and reducing friction. Evolution kept what worked and removed what didn't. Across the limbs, the faint dusting of hair that remains today may seem inconsequential, but it still plays a role. These hairs enhance tactile sensitivity, helping detect insects crawling on the skin, an important defense against parasites. By making body hair sparse yet reactive, humans gained a warning system without the drawbacks of insulation. Each fine hair acts like a micro-antenna, sensing motion before the skin registers pressure. The body shed warmth, but kept awareness. Another mystery lies in gender differences in body hair. Adult males generally develop more hair on the chest, abdomen, and limbs than females. This pattern may reflect ancient sexual selection in which females preferred partners with traits signaling strength or maturity, or where male coat patterns played a visual role in rivalry or group dynamics. Yet even male body hair never reverted to the density of other primates. Selection balanced attractiveness, social signaling, and survival efficiency, resulting in the moderate secondary sex hair patterns seen today. Hair growth patterns also reveal clues about early clothing. As humans spread into colder climates around 17 to 40,000 years ago, clothing replaced body fur as insulation. The first tailored hides and furs preserved in archaeological sites such as those in Siberia served the purpose hair once had. Clothes allowed hairlessness to continue even in freezing environments without threatening survival. Because clothing could adapt faster than biological evolution, body hair never returned in force. The few regions where it persisted kept their functional roles, not their ancestral density. Even the direction in which hair grows tells a story. The swirl atop the scalp, the downward flow of arm hair, the symmetrical curls at the groin. All these patterns evolved alongside sweat patterns, water flow, scent dispersal, and heat management. Nothing is random. Evolution molds even the smallest details for function. These surviving patches of hair remind us that evolution is not all or nothing. It is a sculptor, not a fire. It cuts away and preserves selectively. Humans did not become uniformly naked because certain regions still required hair for signaling, protection, communication, or identity. The pattern we see today, smooth limbs, expressive faces, scent-bearing hollows, protective scalp, is a map of ancient pressures etched into biology. By the time early humans mastered fire, walked entire continents, and formed deeper social networks, this pattern of selective hair retention had stabilized. Humanity carried forward a unique combination of vulnerability and advantage: exposed skin ready for wind and water, preserved hair ready for shielding, sensing, and signaling. The strange reason humans became the only hairless ape is not simply because we lost our fur, but because we kept just enough of it to remain human. Hairlessness left our ancestors exposed to temperatures that dipped sharply after sunset, especially in open terrain, high altitudes, or unfamiliar northern regions. But rather than reversing evolution and regrowing thick coats, humans solved the problem with something no other primate had mastered: technology, the merging of mind, material, and social cooperation. Clothing, shelters, controlled fire, and new patterns of group behavior all emerged because the naked human body demanded solutions beyond biology. And in answering those demands, early humans built the first foundations of culture. To understand this shift, we must visualize the life of Homo erectus around 1 million to 500,000 years ago. During the day, hairlessness was a triumph, sweat glistening, wind cooling, muscles moving in long, unhindered strides. But at night, temperatures plummeted across many parts of Africa, and even more so in Eurasia, where winters grew harsh. A hairless body loses heat rapidly. Fur insulates because it traps warm air between the hairs. Bare skin provides no such buffer. Early humans, stepping further outside the equatorial cradle, needed new ways to keep warm if they were to continue expanding their range. And so the first solution emerged: fire mastery. Earlier sections touched on fire's emotional and cultural influence, but here its thermodynamic importance takes center stage. Sites like Wonderwork Cave in South Africa provide evidence of controlled fire around 1 million years ago. Charred bones and ash layers reveal repeated, deliberate use. For a hairless species, fire was not optional. Fire was survival. Humans slept near flames, gathered in tight clusters, shared warmth, and found comfort in a circle of heat that replaced the fur evolution had taken away. Fire allowed them to inhabit nights while other animals retreated. It also made new landscapes accessible: colder valleys, breezy highlands, and shaded woodlands where daytime temperatures dropped. As human cognition expanded, fire taught them more. It softened roots, warmed meat, repelled predators, and hardened tools. But most importantly, it bought time to think, to plan, to teach, and to form relationships after dark. All of that extra nighttime interaction enriched their developing minds. Hairlessness had indirectly initiated this cascade. No fur meant vulnerability. Vulnerability demanded innovation, and innovation shaped the human brain in ways no simple biological mutation ever could. But fire was only the beginning. The next revolution arrived quietly, stitched together one piece at a time: clothing. The archaeological record suggests that the first clothing may have emerged around 300,000 to 200,000 years ago, though indirect evidence appears earlier, specifically in the genetic divergence of body lice from head lice roughly 170,000 years ago, implying that humans were wearing garments that lice could inhabit. But the cognitive seeds of clothing likely existed long before full garments appeared. Early humans may have draped hides over themselves at night, used skins as sleeping mats, or wrapped damp hides around limbs for warmth after long hunts. Clothing was a direct answer to a problem no furred animal faced: how to conserve heat when biology alone is insufficient. As climates shifted with glacial cycles, humans innovated rapidly. Hides scraped clean with stone tools, sinews twisted into straps, fibers woven into simple coverings, all arose from the gap hairlessness left behind. The ancestors who solved nighttime cold survived. Those who didn't fell behind. Clothing became part of human identity as fundamentally as walking upright. Shelter soon followed. Even simple structures of branches, stones, and leaves helped shield groups from cold winds. Caves provided natural insulation. As humans migrated into Eurasia, they encountered harsh winters, unpredictable storms, and fluctuating environments. Shelter and clothing became paired inventions, each supporting the other, each allowing the expansion of populations into climates where no other hairless mammal could survive unaided. This creative response to cold didn't just reshape the body's environment, it reshaped the mind that conceived those solutions. Innovation required foresight, planning, memory, and resource sharing. A hide scraped today might serve as warmth tomorrow. A fire kept alive through the night required cooperation. A shelter built by several individuals offered safety for all. These behaviors strengthened social bonds and encouraged the division of labor. The cognitive abilities that would one day lead to symbolic thought, art, and technology were being nurtured by the demands of a body without fur. There's another dimension to this transformation: metabolism. Hairlessness influenced how early humans used energy. Without insulating fur, the body had to maintain warmth through internal heat production. This required more calories. More calories meant more hunting and gathering. More hunting and gathering required cooperation, improved tools, and better strategies, all of which boosted intelligence and communication. The naked body was energy expensive, but that expense fueled the engines of creativity and collaboration. As humans spread across diverse climates, skin pigmentation worked in tandem with clothing. In colder, low UV regions, clothes covered much of the body, reducing sunlight exposure even further. This accelerated the selective pressure for lighter skin to maintain vitamin D synthesis. This interplay between environment, clothing, and biology shows how human evolution had become a dynamic conversation between culture and genetics, a feedback loop unique to our species. Hairlessness also influenced sleeping patterns. With less natural insulation, humans likely slept closer together, enhancing group warmth. This nocturnal closeness strengthened bonds, facilitated the care of children, and reduced nighttime anxiety. The emotional architecture of close-contact sleep still lives in humans today. The comfort of sleeping beside loved ones, the calming effects of shared warmth, the distress of isolation. These behaviors may have originated in the cold nights of early human evolution. A final, fascinating detail concerns the sense of touch. Without fur, human skin became far more sensitive. Nerves beneath the surface detected temperature changes instantly. Touch acquired greater emotional range, gentle contact, soothing strokes, supportive gestures. This sensitivity likely enhanced empathy and social communication. Cold nights, shared fires, and communal sleep gave ample opportunity for physical reassurance, strengthening group cohesion. Hairlessness expanded human emotional vocabulary. By the time humans mastered clothing, fire, and shelter, hairlessness was no longer a liability, but a flexible platform, one that could thrive in deserts, forests, mountains, and eventually even icy tundras. The naked ape became the adaptable ape, not because biology kept pace with the climate, but because cognition and culture stepped in where evolution paused. It is one of the rare moments in natural history when a species did not adapt to its body, but adapted the world around its body. Cold nights tested early humans, and those tests sharpened minds, strengthened bonds, and pushed the species into the realm of creativity. Hairlessness was not a mistake. It was an evolutionary gamble, one that paid off in the development of shelters, clothing, technology, and the mental resilience needed to face continents yet unseen. This is the story not of a single moment, but of a long evolutionary arc stretching from early Homo erectus through Homo heidelbergensis into the earliest Homo sapiens and even into modern humanity. It is the story of how bones tell of a body built for sweating, how lice evolution records the timeline of clothing, and how genes silently archive the reduction of fur long after the fur itself is gone. To begin, consider the fossil record around 1.5 million years ago. While fossils cannot show hair directly, they reveal patterns of thermoregulation, locomotion, and brain expansion that strongly correlate with the emergence of bare skin. Homo erectus, with its long legs, tall stature, narrow hips, and reduced body mass in extremities, was built for endurance. These skeletal traits are not minor features. They represent a dramatic shift from earlier hominins like Australopithecus, whose wider hips, shorter legs, and robust frames resembled those of climbing apes. Endurance hunting, long-distance travel, and midday foraging implied a need for efficient cooling. The bones from Turkana boy, KNMWT 15,000, dated around 1.6 million years old, reveal a youth with limb proportions nearly identical to modern humans. His anatomy whispers a message. This body was meant to shed heat, not hold it. Fur would have trapped heat mercilessly in such a frame. Isotopic analysis of fossilized teeth from early humans also reveals dietary changes consistent with long-distance movement. These individuals consumed mixed environments, woodland plants and savanna foods, indicating wide-ranging foraging. Wide ranges mean more time exposed to direct sun. More exposure means higher risk of overheating, and so the pressure toward hairlessness continued building. But the clearest fossil-free evidence of ancient hairlessness comes from an unexpected source: lice genetics. Human lice are specialized to our bodies, and two of their subspecies, head lice and clothing lice, diverged around 170,000 years ago. This tells us that humans were wearing clothing by that time. But even more impressively, the divergence between human lice and chimpanzee lice dates to roughly 1.2 to 3 million years ago. This suggests that our ancestors' fur environment changed so drastically that lice evolved into a new lineage to adapt to it. This timeline aligns astonishingly well with the emergence of Homo erectus, supporting the theory that humans became largely hairless around 1.5 to 2 million years ago. The parasites, ironically, preserve the history of our lost fur better than any fossil. Another genetic clue lies in the MC1R gene, responsible for melanin production. In most mammals, MC1R varies widely. But in African populations, where UV exposure is highest, this gene shows remarkably limited variation. Such strong selective pressure indicates that early humans required reliable dark pigmentation to protect newly exposed skin. This implies that hairlessness and dark skin co-evolved in early Homo species. In apes, thick fur acts as UV protection. In hairless humans, melanin took over. The fossil sites of early Homo erectus, Cubiphora, Olduvai Gorge, Dmanisi, sit under intense UV environments where unprotected skin would have suffered severe damage. The consistency of dark pigmentation among equatorial human populations today reflects this ancient evolutionary demand. Another remarkable piece of evidence comes from thermoregulation models. Studies comparing heat loss in furred versus hairless bodies demonstrate that even moderate exercise in warm climates becomes dangerous for mammals with dense coats. A human-like running pace forces a body with fur into heat stress within minutes at midday temperatures. A hairless body with sweating can continue for hours. Fossil trackways showing prolonged travel and endurance-compatible gait patterns strengthen the hypothesis that early humans evolved for sustained movement under the sun, requiring exposed skin. The shape of the human nose may also reveal clues about hairlessness. Unlike apes' flat noses, humans have projecting nasal structures that help regulate airflow and temperature. This adaptation likely supported a lifestyle requiring high rates of respiration, breathing deeply while running long distances. Fur would have interfered with heat exchange across the face and head. Adaptations to the nasal cavity align with improved cooling efficiency. Even the hyoid bone, connected to speech, offers indirect insight. Speech requires fine control of breathing rhythms. Endurance running and efficient cooling produce stable breathing patterns that later supported the evolution of language. Hairlessness didn't cause speech, but the adaptive package that included sweating and endurance running likely supported the stable respiratory patterns that speech eventually relied on. Evolution rarely alters just one trait, changes spill into new possibilities. As the timeline moves forward into the era of Homo heidelbergensis, 600,000 to 300,000 years ago, evidence of systematic hunting and colder climate habitation appears. These humans made clothing and shelters out of necessity. Yet even in glacial regions, we see no biological reversion to fur. This is extraordinary. Many mammals regrow fur in cold climates. Humans never did. Something had fundamentally shifted. Culture stepped in where biology stepped back. This tells us that by this time, hairlessness was fully established and deeply integrated into survival strategies. The final emergence of Homo sapiens around 300,000 years ago brings the story closer to completion. Fossils like those from Jebel Irhoud show modern facial structure and gracile bodies, traits consistent with a lineage already accustomed to heat dissipation and social signaling through exposed skin. By this point, selective hairlessness was not an emerging trait, it was the human condition. Modern variation in body hair across global populations provides a last piece of evidence. Some groups exhibit thicker body hair, others far less. This distribution does not follow latitude strictly, but instead correlates with sexual selection, cultural preferences, and historical migration routes. This variability confirms that hairlessness had largely stabilized long before humans dispersed globally, with later adaptations shaped more by social than environmental forces. Taken together, bones optimized for heat dissipation, parasite evolution marking the loss of fur, pigmentation genes adapting to exposed skin, respiratory adaptations for endurance, and cultural innovations replacing biological insulation, we find a consistent narrative. Humans were nearly hairless by at least 1.2 to 1.5 million years ago. The exact endpoint of fur loss remains invisible, but the echoes resonate clearly through multiple lines of evidence. The hairless lineage was not a sudden break, but a slow evolution captured in genes, tools, climates, and the bodies of predators and parasites that evolved alongside us. It is a story told not by a single fossil, but by everything around the fossil: the climate, the behaviors, the footprints, the lice, the genes, the scars of adaptation etched into bone. By the time modern humans painted caves, buried their dead, and crossed seas, hairlessness was so ancient a fact that no one noticed it anymore. It had become simply what a human was. Fire is no longer our only warmth. Clothing is no longer our only shield. Medicine, migration, settlement, and global travel have changed the rules. And as we project forward, we discover that hairlessness is not merely a relic of the past, it is a living trait, still being sculpted by choices, environments, and cultural forces that didn't exist when the first humans walked beneath the savanna sun. To understand the naked future of our species, we begin in the recent past. Over the last 10,000 years, since the dawn of agriculture, human living conditions transformed dramatically. People began building permanent structures, sleeping indoors, wearing layered clothing, and developing tools that diminished the need for biological insulation. The selective pressures that once favored hairlessness weakened because the environment itself became controlled. Houses buffered temperature swings, fireplaces kept people warm through winters. Later, architecture, metalworking, and much later still, insulation all reduced the evolutionary cost of having bare skin. Once a crucial adaptation, hairlessness became neutral, neither strongly selected for nor against. This allowed new variations in body hair to persist across populations. Some lineages grew slightly more hair, others grew less. Sexual selection, cultural ideals, and aesthetic preferences replaced natural selection as the dominant forces acting on body hair. Consider the effect of sexual selection. Throughout recent human history, cultural signals have influenced which traits are considered attractive. In some societies, smooth skin became associated with youth, health, and fertility. In others, body hair signaled maturity or strength. Because these preferences varied across cultures and eras, no single universal direction emerged. But the fact that body hair could now fluctuate so freely reveals something important. Hairlessness had already accomplished its evolutionary purpose. Once sweat-based cooling, parasite reduction, and social signaling were established, humans no longer needed to remain maximally hairless. Culture stepped into the evolutionary gap. But while body hair variability increased, one area remained remarkably stable: the near-total absence of fur across the torso and limbs. Even in populations where body hair is thicker, it never approaches the density of apes. This persistence reflects deeply rooted genetic changes that occurred millions of years ago. The human hair follicle pattern, high density but low thickness, was locked in long before modern humans emerged. Our follicles remain active but produce fine vellus hair instead of insulating guard hair. Culture might shape how we groom, cut, or display hair, but the underlying biology still carries the ancient signature of the savanna. As humans moved through diverse climates, from deserts to tundras, their naked skin responded not with new hair growth, but with other adaptive tools: clothing, shelter, fire, and eventually agriculture. The invention of tailored clothing around 40,000 years ago, evidenced by specialized bone needles and hide-working tools, allowed humans to venture into Arctic environments where survival without fur would have been impossible. Yet even in these harsh climates, humans did not regrow dense body hair. Evolution had already committed to a hairless template supported by cultural solutions. This marks one of the clearest examples of gene-culture coevolution, where tools and behavior become intertwined with biology, reducing selective pressures that once shaped the body. Fast forward to the Holocene. As villages became towns and towns became cities, humans reduced their exposure to the natural elements even further. Indoor fires, ovens, textiles, and communal living softened the temperature extremes that once killed. Parasite burden shifted from ticks and lice hiding in fur to new challenges: bedbugs, fleas, mosquitoes, and later urban pests. Clothing ironically created new ecosystems for lice, yet also blocked many parasites that once clung to body hair. Hairlessness became not only unnecessary for survival, it occasionally became a disadvantage, exposing more skin to biting insects, unless protected by cloth or shelter. Still, because humans could create garments faster than they could evolve fur, biology did not reverse course. In the last millennium, global migrations intensified, populations mixed, genetic diversity expanded. The range of hair patterns, from almost hairless bodies to more visibly hairy chests or arms, spread across continents. But none of these variations challenged the fundamental framework of the human body: sparse, fine hairs instead of a true coat. The future of hairlessness would be shaped not by savannas but by technology. Consider the modern world. Humans now inhabit environments their ancestors never imagined. Skyscrapers in cold metropolises, desert cities cooled by air conditioning, Arctic research stations heated by electricity. Climate control has nearly eliminated the evolutionary pressures tied to temperature. The need for hair as insulation has vanished completely. Humidity and heat can be regulated with machines. Parasites are controlled with medicine and hygiene. Light exposure, once the sculptor of skin pigmentation, can now be mitigated with sunscreen, shade structures, or artificial lighting. Genetically, humans are slowly drifting toward even less body hair. Studies of modern genomes show mutations that reduce hair thickness spreading more widely, possibly driven by relaxed selection combined with subtle cultural preferences. Yet these changes are slow. Evolution does not rush when survival is not at stake. There is also the curious matter of future sexual selection. In many societies, smooth skin, regardless of biological sex, has become a desirable aesthetic trait. Grooming practices like shaving, waxing, and laser hair removal artificially reinforce hairlessness. Over thousands of years, such practices could theoretically influence mate choice strongly enough to leave a genetic imprint, slowly reducing hair growth in populations where such grooming is normative. This would represent a new phase of evolution, not shaped by climate or parasites, but by culture and personal preference. At the same time, biotechnology opens the door to unprecedented possibilities. Gene editing could, in theory, further reduce body hair. Cosmetic procedures already allow permanent hair removal. Humans may one day sculpt their biology intentionally. Accelerating trends evolution began millions of years ago. The hairless ape might become even less hairy, not through natural selection, but through engineered identity. Yet, hair's future is not unidirectional. Cold climates, rugged outdoor environments, and naturalistic lifestyles may foster subcultures where body hair is valued. Global variation will persist. Evolution, after all, thrives on diversity, not uniformity. But the most intriguing question is this: why did hairlessness persist so strongly once it emerged? Because the human species built a world around it. Everything from fire to clothing to architecture to social bonding patterns reinforced the hairless condition. Hairlessness became part of our technological identity. We mastered the world not by insulating ourselves biologically, but by shaping the environment to fit our bodies. Humans today still sweat more than almost any other mammal. We still express emotion visibly on bare skin. We still rely on touch as a form of reassurance woven into our biology. We still read micro-expressions in ways a furred face could never reveal. Hairlessness is not just a physical state, it is a mode of communication, a platform for social life, a foundation for culture. It shaped how we saw each other around the fire. It shaped how we bonded, chose mates, cared for children, and built communities. In the future, as technology continues to soften environmental pressures, hairlessness will remain part of our species, not because it is required, but because it has been written into deep layers of our biology and identity. Whether modified, celebrated, minimized, or reconstructed, it will continue to define the human silhouette against the backdrop of a changing world. The naked ape is still evolving, but its hairlessness is no longer a question of survival. It is a canvas on which humanity's next chapters will be written.